It's been a pretty hectic, chaotic day. I'm going to record a little bit more for what I think is going to be this week's vlog on a couple of tips that helps to how to get good at going into cold plunges. So I'm going to jump in. I don't know if I'm going to explain a whole lot, just because I'll probably overlap it with what I explained to Telsey this morning as I coached her through kind of getting better at it. So all the tips are included there. I may quickly review them, but I'm just going to jump in there because there's not many things that feel as good as getting into the cold water if you've been grinding all day, working really hard. It's such a good way to reset, cut out all that inflammation from stress, busyness, hard workouts, all of that stuff. Cold water is the way to go. Well, I don't know if this day in the life video I can get done this week, so I was going to have
just use it as a clue, maybe.
The top tips for cold exposure as kind of this week's video, probably.
Sure.
But so there's 3 or 4 things that I think are really useful and important for, as I say, getting good at cold exposure kind of means that you can control your shivering if you get to that point.
Okay.
Because rule number 1 is you never want to actually start shivering. That's kind of a sign that your core temperature is getting too cold.
And that's dangerous.
Yeah, that's like getting into a hypothermic state. So you definitely don't want to do that. That's the nice thing about having the hot tub there. If you reach that shivering point, get out and get back in and sort of try again, reset.
Okay.
The first thing is actually one from Ben Greenfield that I learned that is really interesting. Is one of the best things you can do is, first off, you don't want to splash yourself in. So you see a lot of people do
get in fast. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. You see a lot of people do the polar plunges and stuff, and they're running in there, and the water's hitting them all over the place, and that just causes a lot of stress on the body, shocks the system a lot.
Okay.
So ease yourself in as slowly as possible so that you're not splashing. Everything's very gradual.
Gotcha.
And then the next part of that is actually getting your face wet as soon as you can.
I didn't know that.
Is actually so. As mammals, we've got what's called the mammalian dive reflex.
Okay.
Which, when your face gets wet, just like a baby that's face down in a pool for 8 minutes and still surviving.
Right.
Our heart rate and everything, our parasympathetic system kicks in to conserve oxygen when we get our face wet.
Oh.
So that's why deep divers can actually stay underwater so long and stuff.
Cool.
So get your face wet will actually activate that so that you calm down. Your breathing will slow down. Your heart rate will slow down. And so that makes it quite a bit easier.
That's so interesting.
Because the second thing is to immediately, what I say is reclaim your breath.
Mm-hmm.
So before going in, even when in the hot tub or whatever, you can do the breath of fire or whatever, kind of get energized and fired up. Makes it a little bit easier to kind of just mental toughness yourself in there and just not dive in, but just
ease myself in and get my face wet.
Just kind of get through that initial sort of grit of it.
Yeah.
But once you get in, your reaction is going to be to start breathing in shallowly into your chest, right? So you want to, as quickly as possible, I find that it's breathing into your belly.
Okay.
It's not the same as Wim Hof method breathing is not really done in concert with the cold exposure as much. No. So
it's more of a prep.
It's kind of a different modality all in of itself. I've found, at least, I find that just deep breathing into your belly and keeping calm, which sometimes Wim Hof does, that method does work, but it's also it's a method that activates your sympathetic nervous system quite a bit, right? Because you're in a hyperoxygenated state, which is kind of like hyperventilation. It's not as calm necessarily. So just the deep breathing, make sure that your belly's relaxed and expanding.
Okay.
As hard as it is, because everything's cold and wants to shiver up. And then so the third thing is, if you do find that you're getting cold for a little bit, you can kind of flex everything in your body, because that's actually gonna kick on like that brown adipose tissue because it's metabolically active, and also all the muscles are going to be firing. So that's going to like heat you up a bit.
Flow going.
Yeah, so that's something you can do as well. It kind of negates some of the effect of getting good at the cold exposure, but it'll help you sort of build up this tolerance to extending the time.
Okay.
It can also kind of prevent, like, one thing is the brown adipose tissue is often is part of the shivering mechanism, right? So by flexing in, you kind of can stop yourself from getting to that shivering point a little bit.
Okay.
But then you still want to like reclaim the breath and get that slow breathing back under control if you do start to clench up in the need for like shivering. And then the final thing that's kind of like the ace in the sleeve is either like sing a song to yourself or play a song and kind of try to go for that. Because like a good goal is sort of like the 3 to 4 minute mark of like an extended cold plunge is a pretty good goal. At least that's kind of what I would say the mark is. If you can,
is that like you've gotten good if you're there, or is it like,
I think that's
like me as a beginner, I should be able to do that?
No, that's like a mark that you've gotten good. I would say that you've gotten pretty good. Even from kind of the sense of like a survival mechanism, if you fell into a frozen lake, you would hope that within 4 minutes or so, you've kind of found a way to get out or whatever, but at least
that's a long time.
That's a long time. That's a lot of time to process things. Like that's the mark that I find if you kind of reach that point without shivering, you're able to kind of go indefinitely without shivering too, because that's sort of once your body's kind of released that vasoconstriction of trying to keep your core really safe, and it's starting to realize we're going to be here a while. We need to warm everything else up.
Right.
And so, that's kind of the mark to beat. But you can start with doing the contrast, even if it's at a 1-to-1 ratio of a minute to a minute kind of thing. And then over time, do a 1-to-2 ratio of hot to cold. And then finishing on cold's always like
cold. I was going to ask that.
It's always, you always feel best if you do it that way, because then you get kind of a release of dopamine and norepinephrine, and it feels like you just had an espresso shot without the jitters or anything. Okay. So those are I've heard key tips.
Hands out, or is that
hands out's like a good starting point, but the
so
mark,
it's like a sissy thing to do.
The mark would be to like right up to your neck.
Okay.
That's
which
kind
I
of
think with this tub I can't physically do unless I'm like.
Oh.
Because that'll make the water come up too much.
Right.
So that takes a little bit more willpower. I'll give it a try.
We'll have to fill it up to the right level to make that work. But that's hands in. I mean, you can start with hands out because it is going to be quite a bit easier. Like the extremities are what hurts the most for the first minute. But that's where...
I've seen people like full on start this way.
Yeah, that's where once you get used... That's one of the keys to being good at it for extended periods of time is being able to like keep your hands relaxed and not clenched up even. Because it hurts the most at first, and it's also kind of the first part of the body that's going to start to release and vasodilate again, so that you can actually keep a little bit of functionality. So
Okay, so
off you go.
Give me a recap.
So
I'm
recap.
Overwhelmed.
There's quite a bit of info that.
Give me the quick list.
So ease yourself in. Get your
splashing.
face wet as quickly as possible.
I already forgot that, so that's good.
Reclaim your breath.
Yes.
So as soon as that water starts touching, start to breathe deeper, and don't like everybody wants to like really. Breathe rapidly and stuff, but it's just all about slow. Stay calm. And then over time, you'll find that it becomes more of like it's a deep meditation. You got to be very present. And the more that you become present in the cold water, the less you're going to shiver. It's like you can start to control that shivering mechanism in your body. So, so those things. And then
sing a song.
And flex or sing a song if you need to.
Yeah. Okay. Let's do it.
Yeah.
Who's gonna warm your cold, cold heart? Not me, it's not me. Not me, it's not me. Who's gonna be there when you're breaking down? Who's gonna fix you when I'm not around? Not me, it's not me. Not me, it's not me.
So I usually like to start with the hot tub for a little bit. Don't know if it's always the best option because then your body just wants to release extra heat, so sometimes the sensation of the cold tub feels a little bit extra cold at first. But I usually just like to relax a little bit first and kind of get into it that way. One thing you'll notice with the cold exposure is that the first minute is when your extremities are going to start to get the coldest. And one thing that I talked about with Telsey that you got to remember is breathing into your belly. So even if you're feeling cold, you want to make sure that you're breathing into your belly so that you're just staying calm. And putting the water on your face at the first sort of easing into the water also helps you to withstand it more because it calms you down. It activates that mammalian dive reflex that we have as humans. And then after a couple of minutes, you'll start to notice less tingling in your extremities as they start to warm up a little bit more, because your brain starts to recognize that you're going to be here for a while and kind of kicks into survival mode in a different sort of way than just protecting your core by helping you to withstand this for longer periods of time by warming back up. And that's what shivering does too. But I find that if you just relax into it, you're not going to reach that shivering point. You can also do like the clenching of your shoulders and chest and everything. But the more that you can relax and ease into it, I think that's where you kind of discover these deeper benefits to doing the cold plunges.